You're listening to After Images, a podcast for cinephiles that takes a deep dive into moving images. Each episode features a special guest who is invited to explore a film of their choice. After Images is hosted by film writers Franck Bouleg and Marisa C. Hayes.
Argentine film director Laura Citarella invites us to discover Roberto Rossellini's 1950 feature film Stromboli. Starring Ingrid Bergman, the film is the first in a series of cinematic collaborations between the Swedish actress and the Italian neorealist. Stromboli follows Bergman in the role of Karin, a displaced Lithuanian in Italy after World War II, who marries Antonio and moves with him to his birthplace, the volcanic island of Stromboli, close to Sicily. It's harsh, barren, and extremely conservative. Karin does her very best to integrate on the island, but soon comes to the conclusion that she needs to escape from this open-air prison. Mixing documentary-style footage and symbolic meaning, the film depicts the daily life of the fishermen on the island, while the presence of the monstrous volcano in the background creates an atmosphere of constant insecurity, stressing the anxious relationship Bergman's character has with the island and its inhabitants. Both realistic and transcendent, Stromboli marked the beginning of a creative decade for Bergman and Rossellini that gave birth to multiple gems.
Born in La Plata, Argentina in 1981, Laura Citarella graduated as a film director from the Universidad del Cine. Since 2005, she has been part of El Pampero Cine. She directed the films Ostende, 2011, La Mujer de los Perros, Dog Lady, 2015, co-directed with Verónica Llenas, and Las Poetas Visitan a Juana Binozzi, The Poets Visit Juana Binozzi, 2019, co-directed with Mercedes Halfon. Trenkelauken, 2022, is her fourth film and has been distributed around the world. It was selected as a best film at various festivals and was named Film of the Year by Les Cahiers du Cinéma in 2023. It was also chosen as Best Film, Best Director, and Best Ensemble by the International Cinephile Society. Citarella's latest film is El Affaire Miu Miu, a 2024 short which was part of the Miu Miu Women Tales project. Citarella has also made her name as a major producer in Argentine independent film. Her production work includes all the films made by El Pampero Cine. She has been professor at Universidad Nacional de La Plata for more than 10 years. Welcome, Laura Citarella, to After Images podcast. We are delighted to have you here today for a discussion of Roberto Rossellini's 1950 feature film, Stromboli.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's such a pleasure. Can you tell us first, why did you choose this film? What does Stromboli mean to you?
It means a lot of things because there are 2 or 3 films that really changed my life, and I think all of them has this relationship with how they were produced or how they were thought. And Stromboli is for me the perfect the perfect example of how cinema can find 2 different things and join them together in an image, which is maybe 2 very different things that would have never found themselves if it wasn't for cinema. I think that the meeting of Ingrid Bergman, a Hollywood star, with the village of Stromboli it's an experiment, and I think it's a way of thinking not only a a possible story of a film, but also how to produce a film. The films are, for me, always built by the encounter of two things that would have never met if it wasn't for cinema. So on this regard, for me, it's a clear example of this. Bringing this woman to this village was, when I saw the film for the first time, I thought, so this is a very big decision in terms of how to build an idea to make a film.
And talking about the first time that you saw the film, when was that? In what context did you first see the film?
I studied cinema at the Universidad del Cine, but I come from a family. I'm from La Plata, and I come from my family. My father is an engineer, and my mother is a chemistry. So they have nothing to do with cinema or with arts, but my father also plays piano, so we have some relationship with the music. But I used to watch films that were classics, no? In La Plata, I went to the cinema because my mother took me every Sunday to the cinema, and I saw, I don't know, French films, like very serious films, very romantic films. And when I started studying at the Universidad del Cine, I came from this city, La Plata. Well, I mean, I was not a cinephile. No, I didn't know even this word. So when I started studying, there were two moments when I saw the Truffaut saga of Antoine Doinel, and when I saw Stromboli, that I found that making films also included how to make them, how to think the production of those films. So for me, this was in the first years of the university, and maybe it could sound like naive, but I really didn't know this world of that the possibility of cinema, it is not only like the storytelling, which is something that I, as filmmaker, I don't care about the storytelling, but also to work on the shape and to work on the like a film can be also the document of how it was built, how it was produced. So this was very shocking for me. I was 17 years old, and I said, so we can also make cinema from this idea, starting on this point.
Interesting. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on this idea of lack of interest in the storytelling. I find that very interesting and very surprising. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that means to you?
Well, I think you can find this in Rossellini's films, but because there is something bigger that commands a film. That in this case, you can think of the neorealist films, the trilogy of Roma Città Aperta, Paesà, and Germania a Not Zero, that you can notice that there's something bigger commanding the idea of these films. That's not I mean, it's not the main thing to tell the story about the boy that, no, it's more, for me, it's the storytelling in all these cases, it's an excuse to show something else. And I think he continues doing this in Stromboli and the films he did with Ingrid Bergman. And maybe the storytelling can appear and in a tricky way, like I'm telling you this story, but in the end, he is still trying to show something else, something bigger. So I think there's a relationship with the films I directed, that when I did Trenkelauken for me was the starting point was the place. I had the list of locations, and I had the idea of the place that I wanted to portray, but not the story. And the story then is something that helps you to organize in a way to make these materials accessible, to let the film being watched by the people, by the audience. But in the end, the main thing has to do with other ideas.
Yeah, it's almost as if you're trying, and Rossellini is trying to introduce us to a world, to a cosmos in which there is a narrative thread, but what really matters is the cosmos itself. And I think that this takes us back to what you said at the beginning of the tension at the root of the film, the clash between a Hollywood actress, Ingrid Bergman, and non-professional actors from Stromboli, the neorealist meeting the Hollywoodian, and what it generates in between. Is that correct? This description of what you're trying to say about Stromboli and its narrative thread?
Yes, and also to I mean, there's something interesting also because she's the one that sends Rossellini a letter because she wants to work with him because she had seen his previous films. So there's kind of a genius there. She sees herself in the films of Rossellini. She projects an image. This is something I want to say because usually we think Rossellini is a genius and he's a genius. But I mean, this was an encounter, a real encounter between an actress that is projecting herself in whatever he wants to do. And she knows the way he works and she knows the way he shoots and the places he shoots. So, and this was important for his career because I don't know if he could continue making neorealistic films, no? He is like one step more. And what he brings in this melting of these two worlds, which is a woman coming from Hollywood and this island that is a very hostile place with a very machist way of behaving and also the idea of well, I continue. So he melts this and what I think makes gives him the possibility of a renewal in his cinematography is also that he brings a foreigner to watch Italy with another kind of gaze, with another kind of. I mean, he as an Italian, maybe he can't continue watching this place that he had watched in many ways, and he's Italian, and he needs something from abroad to rebuild the way of looking at the place and at the situation of the country in the post-war. No, so I think it is not only the funny idea of melting these two worlds of Hollywood and Stromboli, but also how to rebuild a procedure, how to find a procedure. And she's kind of an spectator, you say. She's kind of an audience in her own environment. And it's something that he continues developing in the next films with Ingrid Bergman, because you can see that in the end, in Viaggio in Italia, she's a tourist. I mean, she's a tourist in a way, and she's looking at this world surrounding her in a very strange way. And I think that as filmmakers, we sometimes need this way of building distance with what we are surrounded of, because you are living that life and you are in that world, and sometimes you need to find ways of distance.
But it's so important what you said about the post-war setting of this film, and the fact that at the same time Rossellini is thinking about reinvigorating, rebuilding a film practice at the same time that much of the world is thinking about how to reconstruct itself and question its identity during this time. I'm just wondering for you, what are some of these themes about reconstruction and rebirth that we notice in the film? It seems very rich from this point of view.
Yes, maybe there are some how do you say that, some declarations of Rossellini. I've been reading a lot. He's very he speaks all the time about in Italian is lasciare la libertà al spettatore. It's like giving the freedom to the audience to watch, and I think that in these cases he's trying to build a way of looking of this woman that doesn't belong to this place, but also leaves you the freedom, the liberty, the freedom to watch your own way. And I think that it's very what he's trying to do is, I don't know if he's trying to do this, but it seems that cinema starts operating in another way, because when you watch a film, for example, nowadays in contemporary cinema, you find that the directors are trying to bring the world to the films, to bring the agenda, to bring the big stories to like an extension of the world. And I think that when he tries to find this distance in the gaze of Ingrid Bergman, is trying to rebuild the world, but all together in a way. Let's look at this. We are going to show the world through her eyes, but even you have the time to find your own relationship with these things that happened to the world in the last years, and that we have to recover from that. So I think he opens the sense in a way that I don't know if somebody had done before. For me, this is very interesting, because he's not even, you see a woman that is very disturbed because of the situation and this hostile island, and she's like a kind of a high class woman coming to this dirty savage island, but you see all this that I was describing, but you don't have a prejudice of her. You don't feel that she's evil or that she's in the bad side of the world. And and you don't even feel that about the people in the village of Stromboli, because the sense is opened. He's trying not to be to come to the idea of lack of convergence, not arriving to one only place, not he never works the characters in one only way. He's all the time looking at the aspects of the character. So on this regard, for me, it's very interesting, because the film is a film that it's more important on the procedure and the weight you have to go through while you are watching the film. It's more important than the place that you arrive with the film.
Well, it's so interesting that you say this, because now I realize that Rossellini is really, he predates Umberto Eco's The Open work, where he talks about this same idea of the spectator doing the work, really interacting with the work of art. And it's wonderful that this comes at least 10 years before Eco is writing about this.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Gilles Deleuze, but Deleuze talks about time image. And for him, the moment when we enter into the world of time image is after World War II. And that's the moment when spectatorship, when you have characters who become spectators of the world, when there is no more necessary action as before in time movement. So I think this is very interesting, especially because, just one little more thing, especially because for him, the precursor somehow of time image was Alfred Hitchcock. Who is the one at the junction. And of course, Ingrid Bergman moved from Alfred Hitchcock to Rossellini. So it's interesting to see that she moved and from the two directors that were so fundamental to enter this new era of filmmaking.
It's nice what you say. And there's also a text by Daney, Serge Daney, that it's called, I don't know how it's called in French, it's La Rampa in Spanish.
Oh.
Let me check. Sorry, I have it here. Because it speaks about this idea that the classic cinema, it works. It speaks about Fritz Lang, the film about the door, and he speaks about this idea of what is behind that door. But then he speaks about this, like the time image of the less, that is that you have the images become in a way more democratic, and you can watch the images to accede to that world, and you can have your own way of looking at this image, and this will take you to modern cinema in a way. No,
Yeah.
it's nice. Yes, and I read something that it's I don't remember who was that wrote it. That is that the crossing of Stromboli and Ingrid Bergman confirms the cinema of Roberto Rossellini as the cinema of heterogeneity. In a way, the couple is so heterogeneous, and the cinema becomes in a way, heterogeneous. And I think this is the idea of the term heterogeneity. It's in a way it's the door to the modern cinema.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of modern cinema and these ideas about heterogeneity and also interpretation, what about the ending? I couldn't forget to ask you about the ending and how you view the symbolism of this very surprising end for 1950.
Especially perhaps compared with the beginning in a prison.
Mm.
Yes. There's something very interesting about the ending, because they had like 3 different cuts of this film. So in United States, the relationship between them was a real scandal, the relationship between Rossellini and Ingrid Bergman, and the producers in United States, in the end, I think they cut like half an hour of the film. I didn't see this copy, but I read about this. And there was a text that said that finally she went back to his husband and they were happy. This was the American cut. Then there was a cut for Europe, and then there was an Italian cut that I think it's the one that we can see nowadays. That is the one that Rossellini finally signed. But for me, I was thinking this idea of the endings because I'm a little bit obsessed with how a film should be finished. And this modern aspect that nowadays is so usual for us. I mean, even you can see Trenkelauken and the end of Trenkelauken, a film that starts spreading in the world and finishes, but you don't have like a plot ending. You don't have an ending that describes what happened to the character in the end. But this, in this very moment, was very modern also, because in a way, he decides to finish the film not on its argument, like in the USA, that they wanted the woman to go back to her husband, but with an image and with the repetition of Dio, Dio, that in a way brings you to a sensation and not to a clear idea of what happened. You don't care what happened with this woman. You care about what happens to understand her, I think. And in a way, this comes from this image that is a mixture of something bigger, like a volcano, and the mountains and the nature, something that is bigger, Dio, no, God. So this way of finishing the film, when you see it, you feel that there was no other way of finishing the film. This character needed needed to reveal something, and what happens to her is something so metaphysic in a way. It comes from her existence, that she's pregnant, and you don't even care about it is not that she's a mother. It goes to less conventional things that has to do with how to survive in the world, how to survive when things are bigger than you. That I think that is something in all the Rossellini's films that appear, this idea of we are smaller things, we are small things, and there's something bigger that commands us, no? And also, for me, what is interesting, for me the film is interesting because of this melting of two worlds, this idea of how to produce how an idea starts, of a film starts on this melting, but also there's kind of an intimacy. There's something that you see on her that I think it's something that he knows about her. And the way she cries and the way she performs this moment, it's something that comes from an intimacy, from a relationship they have, and it becomes in a way a document of their own relationship. And then that's again for me what makes the film more powerful, because you are not only watching a story, you are not only watching procedures, you are not only watching the portrait of a real place with real people in a post-war island, but you are also assisting to the history of their own lives. And this is something very powerful for me that cinema have, that can let you see that kind of things that as maybe happened in Hitchcock's films, where there was no transparency on this regard. The real thing behind the scenes is all the time being hidden. And in this case, I think he opens to something that is real. That is the way she cries. This is the way she feels. It's very powerful.
And this ability to read the text on several levels, to read it literally, to read it symbolically, to access to the meta-narrative of the relationship between Bergman and Rossellini. What do you think in this context the volcano itself means? Because it is the central element. It is named after the volcano. What is your take on the volcano and its meaning?
I think it helps to make things even harder. And it's like the film could be, if we have to make a sentence, I think it's this encounter between two worlds, but most of everything, the idea of the territory building these characters and giving complexity to these characters. I think that helps. That finally, I think I read that Rossellini didn't have a script, but he had this idea of a volcano being bigger than the characters, and in a way yes, that the script is written by the territory, I think. And it's one of the main ideas also, because the territory is also the fishing scene, no? The when you see that fishing scene, that for Rossellini used to say that he was more interested on waiting and shooting this wait than going to highlights, no? Going to the revealing of things comes from this thing that comes from down the earth, and this idea of waiting. And you can see this very clearly in the fishing scene, because you could never rebuild this scene with your own hands. It belongs to the world. And it's very smart how he decides. Maybe he had money to rebuild this, or to pay the fishers, and to put a camera in a more controlled way, but he decided not to do that. He decided to shoot, he shoot this scene himself. It is said, I don't know if it's real, but he had to wait a lot of days, because it was not only the volcano, it was also the weather that was very hard in the island. And it was I think it took a lot of time to shoot this film. So finally, there was a sunny day where he could go and shoot these fishers. And I think that the scene, it's a very clear idea of, I think Pascal Bonitzer said this, that there's not a director like the world itself. I mean, even the best director in the world could never win to the force that comes from the world, the real things that emerge from the world. But what is interesting is that if you go and shoot this scene with the fishers and all the ceremony, maybe it will be only like a description of something. But what he does is that he involves Ingrid Bergman in this ceremony. So again, you have this conversation between two worlds. This woman, like a splendid woman, beautiful, with the makeup and the light, like in Hollywood, but so you have, on the reverse shot, you have this real thing living together with the images of Ingrid Bergman. That, for me, in this moment, it's very funny, because a lot of people say that Rossellini has not humor in his film, and I find very funny this moment that she's trying to adapt to this place where she decided to live. She went from a prison to another prison, and every time she's trying to adapt and to make her life a little bit better, and she's all the time so frustrated, and she starts acting performing a dramatic character, but also it has a lot of humor, because it's absurd when she starts like doing this, because all the water comes from the fishers, that like a very masculine situation. For me, this crossing, it's a very the best example that fiction can make a real situation a stronger situation than if you just get a document of that real situation. It's clear.
So totally. But isn't it also interesting that it's by taking this path, this neorealist path, conflating with Hollywoodian moments, that somehow, and maybe because of the setting, the Mediterranean, the film reaches something mythological, that it reaches something of the myth of the Cyclops of antiquity, with the volcano in the background. I had the feeling watching the film that I was watching something taking place at the time of Homer somehow.
Yes, it has something like antique. Yes. Like in the end, these bigger forces will never disappear and will be always there, even in modern cinema.
It's very primordial somehow, this landscape and some of the immediate dangers in the landscape. But even if it's less dangerous, I find in your film, Trinque Lauquen, there's also this sense of a primordial feeling in the landscape somehow that gives it this very mythic kind of feeling. Do you relate to these references, like of mythology, or maybe just tapping into something more primordial?
The omnipresence and the strength of nature, perhaps?
Yes, it's not so easy to think on one's films this way, but I feel that it has something to do with the territory, with the idea of, that's why Trenkelauken started as a film that has the intention of portraying a place. And it's a place that it's even difficult for cinema because, we made this film and many of the films of El Pampero Cine in the province of Buenos Aires, in the Pampas, and it's very difficult to capture this territory because it's bigger than us and because it's flat, and when you have to capture this in an image, you start thinking where do I have to start the frame, and how do I capture this? How do I give this sense that you feel when you are in this territory? And I think on this regard, yes, there's something. It's not only in Trenkelauken, it's also in La Mujer de los Perros. There's a relationship with territory that I think that finally gives has the final decision on your films. You can work with characters, you can work in a very humorous way with situations, but then in the end there's something that is bigger, and I think it has to do with the territory and with the places. I'm very obsessed with the idea of starting of making films, and the starting point, it's always a place, no? Like the idea of a landscape, so I think this is something that in Rossellini appears in his first films, and then maybe he starts finding something else during the years. I think he starts changing a little bit. He never stops watching the places this way, but I think it's a great thing for cinema, and you can also think of Antonioni as the director of places, no? It's something very Italian that they found that whatever they did, they also had to, at the same time, had to rebuild their own country, no?
Yes.
But it seems to me that in Stromboli, the landscape, the frame is blocked by the volcano, and therefore she has to move up. There is no possibility to go further. Whereas in Tranque Lauquen, I had the feeling that the story and the image were always going deeper and deeper into the landscape itself, perhaps because of the flatness of the country.
It's almost the antithesis of the verticality of Stromboli.
Is this something that makes sense to you?
Yes, it could make sense. Yes. I think that maybe the starting point of Stromboli, you have, I mean, you can watch the volcano at the very beginning of the film. You understand that this will be an element that will oppress the population and this woman, and it will be a big presence through the whole film. You cannot read the film without thinking that there's this threat and this big, huge mountain going against that village in a way. And in Trenkelauken, I think that it goes the other way around. You start working with the mystery, and then I think that you find out that this mystery is built because of the place where takes place the story. Because what happens with the province of Buenos Aires is that you feel that it's everything is the same. No, you go on the you go through, I don't know, from Buenos Aires to Trenquelauquen, which is 500 kilometers of nothing. I mean, nothing, no mountains, no. So you feel that it's a place to go through. You don't feel that there's an interest on this place. You don't feel that there's mystery in this place because everything seems to be the same and no magic. But then I think what Trenkelauken works is the idea that if you look a little bit better, you will find mystery in every corner of the province. That's why it works with hidden letters in a public library, in books. It works with revealing, like if you put like the microscope, you will find, and this idea of if you want to find mystery, you just have to be enough awake to look, and you will find mystery. And I think that this is something that you start feeling, or at least this was my intention. I don't know if it's something that's part of the film, but every time you continue watching the films, and you have also this relationship with mystery, because the film won't give you responses immediately or won't give you responses at all, so you build your own questions and your own relationship with mystery, and in the end you start being also part of this landscape. You start understanding how the territory is, and then maybe you have this relationship with you make this connection between mystery and territory. For me, it's one of the most important things. I don't know if I got it in Trenkelauken, but maybe I will have to do it in my next film. But it was an idea surrounding the film, and I think in Stromboli there's the territory is more like something that pushes the character to another state of mind. No.
Yes.
Totally.
And it occurs to me now, in Stromboli, while Ingrid Bergman's character goes up, in your film, Laura sinks down into the water. So there is still this kind of really interesting contrast between the two, either going up or going down, but still tapping into that really primordial sense of the landscape and the territory, as you so beautifully described.
Yes. And also, this is something I had never thought about with this space. So thank you. No, but I was thinking that you have a limit when she goes up the volcano, the mountains. That's why the United States producer decided to put a letter saying that she finally went back, because you feel that there's no way to escape from that huge volcano. I mean, for me, it's the end. It's so has this potential because you don't have a response. She went back or she moved to another place. I feel that she stayed there forever. That's my feeling when I finish watching the film. But in Trenkelauken, I think, well, you have this trick in the last shot of Trenkelauken where she disappears, which is, well, whatever. But I feel that the idea of a woman walking and walking with no place to go, with no with not any other wish than just being walking through the territory, it's in a way the same, because you don't know if she's going to end up in something. She won't go back to her husband in Buenos Aires. She won't go back to Trenkelauken to find the two women with the creature. I mean, you need to keep this in it is not an open way. It is in a more suspended way, because then the film will continue working in your head and your heart when you give this image. That's why I feel that it's important nowadays how you finish a film, because it's kind of childish finishing a film with putting all the responses on the argument or in the plot. So you need to find something else. I mean, we have to learn from Rossellini.
And perhaps to continue with Italian art, I personally had the feeling that the film was connected to Dante's Divine Comedy, that starts with hell underground, then moves to a mountain in purgatory, and ends in heaven, in the sky. And that very much, for me anyway, felt like this was what Karin was going through the hell of World War II, reaching the purgatory of Stromboli, and at the end reaching the heavenly realm. Is this something that you could possibly see as a possible interpretation?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because it's nice what you say, but every time I try to read Rossellini in a more interpretative way, I read his interviews or I watch the interviews in internet, and he was so direct. He was all the time trying to go to very precise things. Then all the power of his films, I think it's in this possibility of rereading, no? But I feel that yes, maybe it could include literature in a way, like the classic idea of Dante going through. I don't know. I'm not sure. He showed. Yeah, I don't know if you saw his interviews are so. All the time he's speaking about. He says, "Io voglio mostrare, no voglio dimostrare." Like he's all the time trying to put things in front of you, but he never works in a metaphorical way. He never works in a way that is not the concrete image that he's building for you to do something with that. No, it's very interesting.
And has your relationship to the film, has it changed over time? Do you have different ways of thinking about the film now than the first time that you saw it?
Yes, because when I saw it for the first time, of course, I discovered all these ideas of that I found that had to do with the way I usually think my own films as director. This idea of words that cross, no, this experimental way of crossing different words. But then when I saw it again some days before to make this podcast, I found, I mean, I'm not so interested on thinking of feminism in films. It is not that something that I do, but suddenly I found that I had never seen before. Maybe it's because when I saw it the first time and then I saw it again, but then a lot of things happened during the past years with feminism and with the idea of how women are built by cinema, etc., etc. And I found that there are no many men watching women the way he does. I mean, the way he works with her and the way he understands her in this film and in the next films, even in Europa 51, Viaggio in Italia, you can see that he runs from stereotypes in a way that I've never seen. This is something new that happened to me. No, the idea, because he's looking at her, but she's also active in this relationship because she was the one that had the main idea to write a letter to Rossellini to join and to do this experimental contribution. So, but I feel that he gives her this possibility of being a lot of women at the same time. He's not putting her in only one stereotype or pro forma. No, there's an idea of leaving a breath to the character that for me it was shocking some days ago when I saw it again, because I thought she's not an object. She's not a passive in the way she behaves in the film, and this was something new for me. Yes.
Yeah. She has a lot of agency in the film. And what's interesting is that the films they created afterwards, as you noted, also show women in very interesting, very different situations, but where there's a lot of autonomy and independence, and I think also a very compassionate way of looking at certain societal questions about what it was to be a woman in Italy or elsewhere during that time period.
Because I think he was also understanding this woman that was his wife, and she was going through a lot of scandals, and a lot of people was saying horrible things about them and about her, because she was leaving her husband and her kids in United States, going to this Italian poor neorealist guy. And in a way he learned something. He said this in an interview. He said it made me deconstruct something in the way I thought the world. It obliged me to rethink cinema. The presence of Ingrid Bergman changed his way of looking in a way. And for me, it's interesting because in the film, for example, in Europe 51, there are some women that understand very well what happens to her. It's so clear what happens to her. She's suffering a lot, and her own her own circle, they don't understand, or they try to put her in a formula that she's not. She's not working for that formula, so they are all the time. And there are some women that understand her. There are some women in the character. There's a character in the end, this crazy woman, and the poor people that she helped a lot. They understand her. So this idea of I think this way of understanding, he's trying to understand her. That's the main objective of Rossellini, I think, understanding, not telling you the conclusion of what happens to this woman or the conclusion of how the world behaves, or no, he's trying to understand. And it's like he's thinking in a loud voice in his films, because he's making you part of this reflection of trying to understand.
It's as if his films were experiments, somehow scientific experiments, where you bring someone from outside, put that person inside a new environment, and you observe what's going to happen.
Yes, in a way. Yes. Well, and he's all in the interviews. He says this. He says that he's trying to show what happens while you are going through a procedure, and he's not so interested on watching at the last moment or the reveal of something. He's more focused on this idea of showing this process, and he says that he would never make films where he knows where this process arrives. He wants to go synchronize with the process of a character, and in the end what happens will be what has to happen, but he's trying to think all the time in present, in what is happening to this character in this very moment.
I'm so glad that you are mentioning many of these interviews and the writing of Rossellini, because you are really giving me the desire to look more now for his writing and look for these interviews. Is there any particular title or interview that you can recommend to our listeners that you think is just a fantastic interview or text that shouldn't be missed?
There's an interview that is there are many interviews by Jacques Rivette, and there are many interviews of Cahiers du Cinéma, and there's a letter of Rivette. No, you must know that one. But then there's an interview that was made by Spanish interviewer. It's in Spanish and Italian. Now, there's a very interesting interview that is made to Rossellini when he was, I think, 75, 71 years old, that a Spanish interviewer made to him. And he speaks Italian and the interviewer speaks Spanish, so you will have to look for subtitles. But what is very interesting for me is that you see a man looking at his life in the past, and he's so clear and so direct as his own films. I mean, he's not saying even one more word, and he's very humble. He's extremely humble, and he takes care of every word he said, because he knows very much what happened to his life. So it's in the end in his last years. So it's very interesting to see someone speaking with this perspective, you know?
You've inspired us to read more and to look for these archives, which is such a great resource.
And as we are getting close to the end of this podcast episode, can you tell us about what you're currently working on?
In this very moment, I'm in El Pampero Cine. I make my own films as director, but I also work very much and very hard as producer of my partner's films. So I've been working in a film that we premiered in Venice by Alejo Moishansky, and then I've been working in Mariano's films. He's making kind of documentary films, of course, never 100% documentaries, but working with real subjects, with real things, and we've been working on that. And then I'm writing 2 films, and one of them, it's a film that takes part in Italy, and it's very interesting because I'm clearly Italian, you know. My surname is Citarella, and my family comes from Italy, and I really love, as you can notice, Italian cinema. So the idea is to work in Italy and in a way rebuild or try to rethink these places that were shot by many Italian directors. Of course, with a very different script. The film is called Las Italianas, but trying to do something that I did already in Trenkelauken. You can see that in the Italian part of Trenkelauken, that there are many frames that are the same as films of Antonioni. So trying to find again these locations, trying to find again how to frame them in a kind of homage, but also a way of updating these spaces and how the world changed and how these places look like now. So I'm working on that script, but I have to have more time to work. It's not so easy to be a South American director because you have also a lot of work and a lot of yes, I'm a teacher at the university. I do many things to survive, so it's not so easy to find a place to write films. But here we are.
We thank you so much for the beautiful art that you have already given to the world, and thank you very much for this discussion today that inspired us to watch Stromboli.
And just before we close, we like to close with a question. That is there a question you wish we had asked that we didn't ask?
No, I think you did a great job. No, I was thinking if it's necessary to. I have a document that I wrote because I tried to bring some notes from Spanish to English because it's not my mother tongue, of course. And what it is explained in the context of how Stromboli appears in the filmography of Rossellini, because we've been talking about this encounter and these two worlds getting together, but maybe I think that could help to understand a little bit more, to have a small introduction that I won't do. You can do it on the podcast, no? To like a starting point to, I don't know who are the listeners of this podcast, but I don't know if they know that Ingrid Bergman came from Casablanca. She was released in Casablanca in the United States. She was I don't know, maybe more about the context, but I don't know if it's necessary.
Okay. But
you made all the right questions.
Thank you.
We will be sure to add some context to the introduction.
Thank you for listening to After Images. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and follow After Images podcast on social media.
After